it was developed out of our island markets that we'd had on Bharraigh since the year 2000, and they'd become really, really popular. We'd had a lot of stalls, and people were wanting to know how to access local produce more than just once a month at our community markets. So we did a survey, and a shop was the thing that was most common. We looked at various options, including supplying the co-op, which had a whole host of barriers. So we came up with our own shop, and the shop is still today, its main focus is being a route to market for local producers. And that includes craft producers and vegetable, meat, anything. So our shop, however, though, could not survive with just the commission from local sales, from local produce, local products. So what we concentrated on was filling the gaps within the community. And one of the gaps was a range of whole foods. We developed an extensive range of whole foods into our shop, and then the funding in 2021 came up from Zero Waste Scotland, refillery funding, which we decided we went for. And rather than just dip our toe in the water, what we decided to do was just go the whole hog. We removed all the packets from our shelves and put absolutely everything in the refillery, because we felt that if it was going to be a success, then we had to go the whole hog with it. So we did the big switch. And we have quite an extensive refillery. I think we were the only ones in the Outer Hebrides to go for a food refillery. Plus, we also have household cleaners as well. Sorry, I just lost my place. So the funding in 2021 was from Zero Waste Scotland. Now, it was a minimum spend of £10,000, and the Buth Bharraigh is a sustainable shop, and we've always been used to doing things on a shoestring. So when you suddenly have £10,000 to spend, it is actually quite difficult. So what we did was we linked up with Eriskay shop, and they installed a small refillery with a few items in their shop as well, and that was to enable us to get over the £10,000 limit. We had our units lovely, purposely made by a local joiner. We had some gravity feed units, which are these ones here, but obviously we were concerned, especially at the start, with the amount of throughput of products we would have and about wastage and things. So most of our items are in jars that range from about 250 millilitres to 3 litre jars. So we had a good idea from our previous sales of what would go in our refillery, and we also took suggestions for other products. Some worked, some didn't work. Some, I think you have to look out for fashions, special diets, you know, some where we're ahead of our time. People do, if a new craze comes out, they ask us to stock something, and we will for a time, but then that fashion will pass. Why did we do it? Well, we are in an area of high food poverty in Bharraigh and Battersea, and we wanted to give our customers a better deal. On Bharraigh, we do have another grocery store and the co-op, but we haven't got an extensive range of items there. We have always been the shop in the community because we've got these other groceries. We are different from other community shops in the fact that we've always provided like eco alternatives and not repeated just what the other shops sell. This way people are just buying what they need, and of course waste is also saved on packaging. So I am in a refilleries group on Facebook, and there are so many refilleries on the mainland closing. And I think it is due to the pressures of cost of living, but also these refilleries are mainly refilleries and only refilleries. I think what's worked for us is the refillery is just one small part of what we do. We have quite an eclectic mix of bits and pieces in our shop, and the refillery fits into that. It is good value. We couldn't just do the whole shop again on the refillery. The co-op that is expensive, what they have to offer. And we can offer a better range, competitive prices, and a better quality of goods as well. And again, people just need to buy what they need to use. So if they want to try out a recipe, rather than buy 250-gram bag or 500-gram bag of something, they can just buy exactly what they need. So in our shop, we have about 256 different products. We had last year 4,587 individual sales of individual items. Yeah. So we take about £9,500 a year through the refillery, and only the refillery. And actually we can make more money on doing it like this and still give our customers a better value than if all the goods were in packets. These are the most popular items. This is kind of things what people ask. Porridge oats, super seed mix, washing up liquid, and we have quite an extensive range of herbs and spices as well, which are extremely popular. And that's it. If anybody has any questions about the refillery, then just ask.
Hi, I'm Melinda Gillen, and I run Hebridean Charcuterie along with Brian when he cares to pop in to help me with production. I do the bulk of it, but that's going to change soon because he's going to be starting to help me full time, which will be really gratefully appreciated because I need him in all aspects of life, but definitely with the business. So we run Hebridean Charcuterie. We take meat from the islands, pork and mutton, and wild meats as well. So red deer and also goose. So the wild meats we wanted to incorporate in our products because better land management in the area, the geese and the red deer cause a bit of a problem on the land. So when we were first setting up the business, we were thinking about how could we incorporate that into our products. So we take from Stores Used was our main provider of wild meat from the beginning, and they provided us with the red deer and the geese. We still get geese from them, but we also get our venison now from the Bharraigh estate. We don't have the capacity to take off a shooters for venison because it comes back to that problem with the processing the meat. We can't process the meat in our facilities, which is too small, and getting the meat processed is a bit of an issue. We did have a connection with Charcuterie, who was that chap Paul, can't remember his second name, was doing a bit of butchery, and he was qualified for that for the deer, but unfortunately his day job got in the way of that. And so we get mainly our deer from the Bharraigh estate. We do take geese off of shooters locally. We have to have a certain amount of certification and hygiene before we can do that to make sure it's fit for the food chain. But where they've got that in place, we can take off of them as well. So yeah, Stores Used, the Community Land Trust, shooters where it's appropriate, Bharraigh estate, and we take off crofters for our pork and mutton. So we get mutton from our good friend Chops in Ness. And also we've taken up at Ali Williamson on the west side. We used to have all our pork from the west side as well, but the Ukraine war shot up the price of pig feed, and then a lot of crofters stopped keeping the piggies. So, I mean, where possible, we get pork locally. If not, we get our local butcher to source a free range for us. That's how we keep supplied at the moment. So that was the last slide. This is the slide, and it shows you our stagionatory on the left, which is where we put our salamis, and they are fermented in this cabinet. Fermented just means that we lower the pH of the product to under 4.9, which is one hurdle that we do to control any bad nasties in the meat. And then it also controls the humidity of the air. And then there's a drying process that goes through as well. So it's supposed to replicate an Italian cave. Probably not as picturesque as an Italian cave, but that's what it's supposed to replicate, and it does a really good job. So the salamis are in there. It's about a 4 to 5 week start to finish process from us chopping up and trimming out the meat really, really well. So in the beginning, we went through a whole bunch of recipes. For instance, we've got our first product was wild and free salami, which you would have had a little taste in your lunch today in the canopies. So wild and free salami is venison, goose and pork. It's got 3 different types of meat in it, and it's flavoured with black pepper and garlic. So quite simply flavoured. It lets the meats kind of be the star of the show. But in the beginning, we didn't know what would work. So we went through all sorts of different recipes, and one of the ones that went kind of really quite wrong is we thought we would have the lovely slow and bramble gin, which is produced in the North East. Now, if you're a gin drinker, or even if you're not a gin drinker, because I'm not really, but I like the slow and bramble gin, this little tipple. And we thought, oh wow, this will work really well with venison, let's put a bit of this in. And we did that, and we went through the process of making it. We drying it out, and we thought we would get this nice sweetness to the product, completely forgetting that in salami making, you are not cooking off anything. So you're not cooking off alcohol. So the alcohol is retained in the product. And the time you reduce it to between 35 and 40%, which is what we have to achieve, it left a certain amount of bitterness in the meat. And it just wasn't very pleasant. So we had that took us over a month to find that out. And we went through a few cycles with the recipes like that. So it's a long time for you to discover your mistakes. And then in the end, we thought, oh, if we just keep this really simple, we'll use black pepper and garlic, and bam, that was like the holy grail. That was the way to go. And to this day, it's our best seller. So can't say we struck gold the first time because it took a few iterations to get there, but it was a really good product in the end. So venison, goose and pork in our wild and free salami. We use mutton and pork in our east to west salami with Bharraigh spice. We use the goose meat to make a cured goose breast product. And we make venison prosciutto. So we really wanted to use meats from the islands, and we also wanted to use, as Sarah was saying, we didn't want to replicate what other charcuterie producers across Scotland were doing, because that didn't really make sense. Why would we want to replicate what was already on the market? So if we can have the next slide. And that's our products there. So we've got the wild and free on the left. We've got our east to west salami with the mutton and pork with the cream packet with the bishop because he's looking after his flock. And then we've got our venison prosciutto, which we are this year going to be introducing packaging for. And I think we're going to go for a cream king. Is it in the end we want 2 sets of chest pieces? And we've got our smoked goose breast in the queen packet there. So we were inspired by the loose chessmen, and that's why we get these kind of Nordic looking figures. As you guys probably know, the Norse once owned these islands, and the loose chessmen are so famous. And we wanted just to pay heed to that cultural heritage, so we decided to use it in the packaging. So the other thing with our packaging, it is sustainable, so it's either made from cardboard, so it's recyclable, or the inner, we have an inner sleeve that looks like plastic, but it isn't plastic, it's made of organic material. So you can basically put it in the bin and it will just break down naturally. So, and that's what we'll be doing for the new packet for sure as well. So next slide, please. So that was my garage in 2020. And then Brian came along and persuaded me, hey, let's do a charcuterie business. And I thought, oh, well, I've got this garage out the back. There was actually nothing in the garage. It was completely unused, apart from some cobwebs. And I thought, well, instead of trying to rent a premises or, you know, convert another premises out there to make sure it was correct for our purposes, why not just convert this building out the back? It was sound, and that's what we decided to do, and it also saved us a bit because we don't need to rent to anybody. So it was just a small garage, but we decided to make our start there. The other benefit of this, because it was the back of my home, is any contractors, because it was during COVID, any contractors that came in, we didn't have to be in the same space as them while they were doing their work. They could just kind of get on with it. So next slide, please. So that is the work actually taking place. So we got new windows and doors put in to make sure that it was compliant and kept, you know, all sort of nice seals on them so there no bugs could get in. We had to level the floor. We installed insulation to make sure that the building was quite sound for temperature. And it was to make it a good hygienic production space. So the next slide, please. Yeah, and then you can see the white clean surfaces going in. So now it's all white inside. You can see the white panel at the end. And that just really easily for cleaning down after each production cycle. The next slide, please. So we did a really good job of the insulation, so much so that we discovered that we had to have some more ventilation and a cooling system in the building. So these pictures on the left and on the right, so this is our cooling and heating system. And you can see it's a heat pump. And during the summer, that gets the temperature down to what we need. Otherwise, the kitchen can get really warm. It does catch the sun on one of its sides for a long time during the summer days. So it can get up to, what, 27, 28 degrees in there sometimes.
Well, only at a very high.
Yeah.
So looking at 20 degrees, which you don't want when you're handling meat to become charcuterie.
So we use this pump to cool the air when it's in the summertime to get it down here. I think we work around about 14, 15 when we are preparing things. And then of course in the winter we want it to be a little bit warmer, so it's actually suitable for humans to be working in. We don't actually want to freeze to death while we're preparing the meat. It's a really efficient system. It doesn't cost that much to run. We only have a small space, but I'm reliably told that it would cool and heat much larger spaces as well, and it works really, really well. So next slide, please. So in the kitchen, we also have a separate metering system. So we know exactly how much energy that we use on a monthly basis and how much that costs us. And there's me with one of the salamis, the fruits of my labour and Brian's labour too. I better include them. And yeah, so next slide, please. So this is our completed fridge on the left here, and that I told you about the Stagionatory. So we've actually got two Stagionatory cabinets. We've got this double one, and that can take about 200 kilos of meat. And then we've also got a single Stagionatory on the other side of the kitchen. So we managed to cram this little kitchen full of equipment and machinery. And these are really, really efficient machines, actually. They're quite low cost to run because they're ultra energy efficient. So as well as less emissions, so we're sort of ticking that green box. But on a business level, it means that the lower cost, which is really important to a small business.
You just mentioned briefly then what's in it, because you can see there's two different things in it, so people are aware.
Okay, so we've got our salami on the left-hand side. It's probably wild and free salami, looking at the colour of it. It's covered in a nice white mould that we put on to help safeguard the meat from any less desirable mould. So that white mould outcompetes any nasty mould, and it keeps the product nice and safe. And then because that mould is already in the Stagionatory, so we actually dip the salamis in that mould solution so that it cultivates that on the salamis. But it's actually in the Stagionatory anyway, so that when we put other products in on the right-hand side, so this is venison prosciutto that's actually hanging on the right-hand side. We don't dip that at all, but because that mould is in the Stagionatory, it will naturally just develop that mould on it. And that will do that whether there's salamis in them or not. It's in there. So yeah, that's our machinery, which works really well. Next slide, please. Sorry, I'm talking too much about each thing. So this is our car, and it's all purpose. It's used for picking up supplies, cleaning materials from McGregor's, or picking up meats from our suppliers, and we've got massive cool boxes in order for us to do that. So I run down to Resort and pick up venison from them. And also for deliveries out to stockists, we'll take that in our electric car. Again, it's less emissions. It's a great driving experience, electric car, and the running costs. Driving electric is really good. It's less likely to break down and things like that. So that's my pitch for electric car driving. Next slide, please. So we've got a bit of a project going on at the moment, which is part funded by Talented. We're going to be developing a new cured meat product. We're going to do a mutton cured meat. And we are going to be extending our building slightly, probably half as much again, because we're going to need new equipment for that, a couple of new drying cabinets. Mutton actually takes a little bit longer to dry than the venison that because we've trialled it. It takes probably about 2 to 3 months to get from start to finish, whereas the venison is usually about 2 months, 6 weeks to 2 months. So yeah, it takes a bit longer, so bring me new cabinets for that. We've also applied to HIE because on the house and on the salami kitchen, we're also going to have some PV installed. And we're also thinking about getting, well, we're not thinking about the aspiration is to get battery storage as well. So again, this will help improve our running costs and also gives us resilience against sort of climate change and any disruption to electricity supplies. So power cuts or anything like that means if we've got battery storage, we can keep our equipment running and no disruption to it at all. And then we are, sorry, next slide, please. So we're also going to be working with Ingrid and she's going to look at the history of cured and dried meats in the region and how that was developed. And again, sort of going back to, I guess, the Norse that came here in their boats a long time ago, and they wouldn't have got here without cured and dried products. So she's going to be looking into that. And we're going to, we do mention this as part of our story currently, but she's going to help us develop that, and it'll be great for our marketing going forward because people are really interested in about why you do things and the provenance of things. So we really hope that'll be a big plus for us to market going forward. I think that's everything.
No, you got one more slide.
So yeah, so I was already talking about the solar and the battery storage. So yeah, hopefully that'll be of great benefit for the business in the long term.
Brilliant, thank you very much. That's wonderful.
Yeah, as Brian said, I'm a social scientist and I work for Atlantic 58, which is an environmental consultancy based in Stornoway on the island. And my role is mostly to do with social research, but quite often there's some overlap with the ecologists, and one of our big interests is the crofting system and crofting communities on the island. But what I'm actually going to talk about is a project that I didn't do through Atlantic 58, so but it ties quite nicely into this today. And in fact, I think what I've prepared, there's not a huge amount to add to what everyone's already said today, so I'm going to stick to my notes, and I won't hold everyone up because I'm impressed anyone's still online at this point in the day. So the project that I'm going to talk about briefly was done through UCBA in Bharraigh, and it was funded by the RSE and the Williamson Trust. And we were looking at how our community could combine innovation with traditional crofting and small-scale farming practices with the aim of improving resilience and the sustainability of our food system. And we were really trying to think about how we could expand what we're able to do as a community and as individuals within it. So what we've got on screen is going to be a little slideshow that goes through some of the archive images and images that were collected throughout the project. So what I'm saying maybe won't relate directly to what you're seeing on the screen. But yeah, so we had a small grant and we were able to carry out archive research, speak with many other growers and crofters. We had a community meal. We did a little survey and looked at how people are already using technology or thinking about other innovations to increase resilience and access to healthy food. So we also carried out a few practical experiments growing different crops, and we also spent a lot of time just observing the local environment that's used locally for cultivation and grazing, with a focus on the commons. So on the west side of Lewis, that's the moorlands and the Macha. Yeah, so that's a kind of summary of what we were doing, and we did quite a lot of archive research, like I said, and informal meetings. A lot of our conversations happened on the Maca with people doing tasks, and the meal also that we had was quite conducive for drawing out lots of knowledge that still exists in our community. Probably my favourite conversations were about cows. Lots of the older people in the community could remember having cattle, 1 or 2 cows at home, and so there was quite a lot of really interesting conversations that brought out knowledge and experience and things that maybe sometimes feel like are lost already, but they're very much still alive in our community. And some of the things that came out were people provided, well, there's a recipe book going around which has lots of local methods of preservation. Lots of people talked about things like salting as a way of preserving meat. So obviously tying into what we've been talking about already last week. But we also got a good understanding of the kind of challenges that exist at the moment. So these have also been talked about today, so I'm not going to linger on any of them, but things like the scale of croft, things stuff to do with the sort of standard size of the croft being actually quite difficult to manage, and maybe looking at larger or smaller units as a way to keep people in crofting. People talked about things like fencing, which weren't used until the mid 20th century, which can cause issues that didn't exist before, like high costs and a sense of maybe poor management or misuse of the common and things like that. So sort of looking at the whole system as a connected thing with people and nature and politics and everything sort of tied in together. A lot of people talked about the need for training, so we've already talked about that today, and financial support for craft-produced food. So yeah, it's a very nice event to come to where I don't actually have to explain anything that we found out. You've already there was a major desire for more communal and cooperative models of production, with a sort of issue around that being the lower number of people available for labour than in the past. But really that's why we were looking at innovations that people have already started doing across the island. And there was also a big desire to reduce waste, either directly from food waste or redundant byproducts. And particularly things like wool, which we've also talked about already. We did a little bit of asset mapping, and we found there's just a huge amount of stuff to go on a map, a food map of the islands. So we did produce a small map of Bharraigh and Arnall, simply because we couldn't manage to produce something good that covered everything that we found. So I wanted to do a little bit of island food mapping, then definitely be up for having a chat with you. Really good visit to North Uist, where we met the Dunes self-service shop.
Okay.
That was a really amazing model to see, as well as people at Uist Distillery who are doing a kind of closed loop approach to their barley. Obviously, a lot of people in the room are very interested in that. So, in terms of technology and innovations for resilience, we found that a lot of people told us about things that hadn't worked for them, and then that they found out afterwards it had already been tried and tested, and some things just don't work here. So don't try and reinvent the wheel. In terms of technology, the number one innovation is actually WhatsApp, because messaging apps are really reliable and really handy for organising communal activity. So if you need people and you want to source a kind of labour supply for a project, or doing things like communal sheep dipping or goose scaring, volunteering, actually, yeah, something like WhatsApp is really, really successful. It seems simple, but there it is. So we kind of ruled out the issues around the crofting system because that's just outside of our realm of control. So I think there's quite a lot going on. The SDF are doing quite a lot for crafting and speaking for crafters. And yeah, in terms of innovations, we were mainly focusing by the end on the self-service shop model for local food hubs, but also this knowledge exchange of heritage or local environmental knowledge that tie into sort of future generations. So yeah, things like salting. A lot of people would say they thought certain things had been lost or forgotten completely, and then we would actually find somebody somewhere how to do that thing. So it's kind of making those connections. Okay, so that is good timing, because after looking inward on the kind of local, and we did quite a lot of focusing on the hyperlocal, with local provenance being actually quite a good thing for selling a product, for example. So you know, having a badge as Hebridean on it can be a really good way to create a successful business. We thought looking outward is actually quite a nice way to, so after zooming in, just to zoom out and get some inspiration maybe. So yeah, so I brought this example. We're going to see a little video. Basically, I came across this project in Japan, which is a context with very similar issues to the Hebrides, quite rural, a population that's getting older, and the sort of issues that go around with that. But we found this really successful example of regeneration where they'd managed to, in some ways, reverse the kind of the changes that seemed inevitable. So yeah, so this place in Japan, they set up a local food hub. And a local food hub is a business or organisation that enhances the capabilities of mainly local producers by aggregating, preserving, distributing and marketing their food products, and at the same time meeting the needs of wholesalers, retailers, but what was really nice about this is that it kind of came about through a lot of sort of very organic grassroots projects, including an artist in residence program in the area, which has played a large role in Kamiyama's regeneration over the past 2 or 3 decades. And what they've done is they've managed to sort of integrate creativity and the social into other projects like this food hub. So, so the food hub has intergenerational knowledge sharing. It has social activities. There are art projects and artistic work that comes out of the food hub, and it really recognises the value of all generations. So it's centred around the idea of older people as a really positive part of the community with knowledge to share, which I think is sometimes overlooked, or it's seen as a problem that you've got an ageing population. So it's a little bit about adapting to having an ageing population rather than trying to completely change it or be in denial of the fact. So yeah, so Kirsty, if you could put the closed captions on when it plays, that would be great.
I think we're all fluent Japanese.
Thank you. Hopefully the sound works. It looks like the sound's not working. And the captions also.
Oh, okay. 1 second. I think right, those are the captions on. Just give me 1 second. sound. Can you just let me know if this is working, Francis?
Yeah, that's great.
春だ。稲をな、こうやって。私自分にはほんまの農業の全盛時代やったけん。芋からトウモロコシから何じゃかしもう家で我がうちで自家生産みんなしちゃったけんな。今土地が荒れてきょんでな、自分やもうこの世におらん自分には大変な人が来ると思う。楽な方へ向いてみんな行くし。
今全国的に過疎が進み、この神山でも親から子へとのつながりがなくなり、地域の仕組みが崩壊しているように思います。私も農業をしていて、お年寄りから子供が都会に行って先祖から守ってきた田畑はあれ、自分の代で終わってしまうのか忍びないと話を聞くことが増えてきましたが、一人の力ではどうしようもできません。心を痛めているところです。地域や家庭の中で何気なく伝えてきたことが宝物とつないでくれるのがこのフードハブプロジェクトと思います。今までつなげてきた些細なこと、子どもに伝えられなかったことを話してみませんか。5年後に今していることをしても遅すぎると思います。今しかないと思います。皆さん、このメンバーの目の色の違うのが分かりますか。私もこのメンバーでこの空気の中でいることが嬉しいです。
このお米を自分でまいて自分で育てて植えるって言いよるんよ。ほんだけまたじいさんまくんから押せてよって
フードハブのチームと町の人たちが一緒にこうつながっていかないと農業も次の世代にはつながっていかないっていうことがあると思うんですよね。農業チームでありパンチーム料理チームであったりっていうのがものを作った時に町の人たちが食べるっていうことでこの町の農業っていうのは次の世代につながっていくと思うんで、そうなれば神山の農業に道筋が立つというかちゃんと未来が見えてくるんじゃないかなと、その状況はできますよと思ってやってます。
Oh yeah, yeah. So I think it's really inspiring to look at is possible and also what I really liked about that the approach taken in Kamiyama is it's not focused directly on leveraging cultural activities, so it's not about focusing on the end result of making money or attracting digital effects, about focusing on people and people like artists and how to support them in whatever their work is, and then allowing that to make this regeneration happen. And I think I chose to finish with this slide This is from a project to do with memory and dementia. That is from, I should have said actually, I did this project with John MacLeod, who's an artist. Did this project a few years ago through Arnanta and with NHS involvement, and what's really lovely about working with older people is quite often it's there's muscle memory which you can trigger when you work on a skill, and that will often trigger memories for talking about stories, and yeah, I think it's something to be treasured and recorded wherever possible and continued. So that's why I chose that last one. That's people, obviously you can see it's people fixing fishing nets. So back to the food system again.
That's
That's it.
beautiful.